ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד, ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם. Hallelujah. We're going to continue now on page 216 or 227 or 560. Uvalitzion hoel shavi fesha b'Yaakov neum Adonai. V'yata kadosh yoshev teilat Yisrael v'karez el zeh ve'amar. Kadosh, 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 Adonai tzvot melech haaretz kavoto. V'tisaini ruach v'shma acharei kol rash gadol baruch kavod Adonai mimekomo. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. V'yivtechu v'chayudehi shemecha ki lo azavta doreshecha Adonai. Adonai chafetz lema'an tzidko yagdil Torah v'yadir. I turn now to our Torah service, which is a service for Torah study, as we gather together virtually. Returning now to the story of Shlach Lecha, which we'll study together in just a little bit, I encourage you, in anticipation of our studies together, to take a look at the heart of the story, which is found in any Bible, in any Hebrew Bible, in Bamidbar, in Numbers chapter 13, beginning with the verse 25, when the scouts return from the land. So vayashuvu mitor haaretz, they come back from the land, and then there's this kind of confrontational moment from among the scouts and Moshe and the people who didn't go into the land. That's what we'll get into later. But as is our custom and as is the tradition, I'll chant now from the first Aliyah for Shabbat morning that begins with chapter 13, verse 1. It's in page 840 of the Eitz Chaim Chumash. And I'll begin with a blessing for Torah study, thanking God for the opportunity to study Torah with all of you this afternoon. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor shalach lecha anashim vayeturu et teretz Canaan asher ani noten lifnei Yisrael ish echad l'matei avotav tishlachu kol nasivahem vayishlach otam Moshe mimidbar paran avi Adonai kulam anashim rashi bnei Yisrael hema ve'ele shemotam l'matei Ruvain Shamuha ben Zachor l'matei Shimon Shafat ben Chori l'matei Yehuda Kalev ben Yefunei l'matei Yisachar Yigal ben Yosef l'matei Ephraim Hoshe ben Nun l'matei Binyamin Palti ben Refu l'matei Zvulun Gadiel ben Sodi l'matei Yosef l'matei Menashe Gadi ben Susi l'matei Taniel ben Kamali l'matei Asher Satur ben Michael l'matei Naftali Nachbi ben Vofsi l'matei Gaguel ben Mochi Ele Shemot Anashim Asher Shalach Moshe LaTorah et Haaretz V'Yikra Moshe L'Hoshea ben Nun Yehoshua V'Yishlach Otam Moshe LaTorah et Eretz Canaan V'Yomer Alehem Aluzeh B'Nekev V'Alitem et Hahar Uritem et Haaretz Mahi V'et ha'am ha'yoshev aleha echazak hu harafeh ha'me'at hu imarav ma'aretz asher hu yoshev ba ha'tova hi imra'a ומהרים אשר הוא יושב בהנה הבמחנים עם במבצרים ומארץ השמנה היא עם רזה הישפך עצים מהעין והתחזקתם ולקחתם מפרי הארץ והימים ימי ביקורי ענבים. So on that next page in the Chumash, or several verses later, if you're following along in a different Hebrew Bible, we get to this story of what happens when those who were sent over to the next land to spy, to see what was there, what they reported back, and what ensued when they brought their reports. That's what we'll study in a little bit. Before we return to the service for the Amidah, I'll ask if anybody has somebody to recall by means of an Almale Rachamim this week. A yahrzeit of a loved one that falls in the course of this week. Okay. If not, then we return now to our Sidurim to do the whispered private Amidah. This one, yep, Marizon has it. That is found on page 223 here in Lav Shalem, 234 in the newer Sim Shalom, 574 in the older Sim Shalom. It's recited privately in a whisper and traditionally while standing. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai da 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 yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. If you haven't yet completed your Amidah, please continue at your own pace. We're on page 281, 297, or 696. We continue with Aleinu. You're invited to rise. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol. Tekedu l'adus hereshi shalos. Kakatuv tortach Adonai imloch leolam va'evnei v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yihye Adonai echad u'shmo echad. Warner's Kaddish is found on page 282, 298, or 698. Yit gadal v'yit gadash shemei rabbah Be'alma divrach yirtei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala ubizman kariv v'imru amen Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'amei amaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'richu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'ramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. You can be seated if you weren't seated already. And we're going to study a little bit of Shlach Lecha and this character of Caleb, this character of Chalev. I had a source sheet sent out, but I'm going to read a lot of these texts out loud and have some of them read out loud by you towards the end. So if you don't have the sheet in front of you, you should be able to be a part of the conversation, even listening in. And we're going to start exactly where I pointed out, which is the point in the text when our spies have returned from the land and they are reporting back. And I want us to think about Caleb, this character of Caleb. I think Chalev sounds so silly. I don't know why. When I say it in the middle of speaking in English, it just comes off so funny. So I'm going to say Caleb for the duration here. I think Caleb is a very interesting character. And I think he's interesting because he's not Joshua. So partially that's what makes him interesting. right? He's not Joshua. He doesn't get Joshua's fate. He doesn't inherit the next leadership position among the people of Israel. Joshua gets the next book. The Torah ends and we continue with Joshua, right? So Joshua gets the next leadership position. But Caleb has this very interesting role in the argument that immediately ensues when the report comes back and apparently, obviously, surprises Moshe, disappoints Moshe as a leader. Because the idea of having the spies go into the land to report back was not to have them come back and say, let's not do this. But that's just about what they say, right? So I'm going to bookend with us reading in English, and most of the sources we're going to try to tackle in Hebrew today. But starting with verse 25, we read, at the end of the 40 days, this is not in your source sheets, I'm just in the Tanakh. At the end of the 40 days, they returned from scouting the land. They went straight to Moshe and Aharon and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the wilderness of Paran, and they made their report to them and to the whole community as they showed them the fruit of the land. This is what they told him. Interesting singular, okay, that vaisapru lo vayomru. So that's an important directional, that's an important direct object in that sentence because we want to pay attention to who is being spoken to at any point in this narrative. This is what they told him. Probably who? Moshe, right? Because they're reporting back to Moshe. Moshe sent them, so they're reporting back to Moshe. So this is what they told him. We came to the land you sent us to. It does indeed flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Right? Here's what we brought you back, right? However, the people who inhabit the country are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the Anakites there. Amalekites dwell in the Negev region. Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites inhabit the hill country. Oh, Freudian though, they also inhabit. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan. That's their report, right? And then we get this line, which is the first line that I have on your source sheet. Vayahas Kalev et ha'am el Moshe, vayomer alo na'aleh v'yarashnu ota ki yachol nuchal la. Let's pick this apart just a little bit. The first thing I want to say is Vayahas, which while there is some clever debate about it, it ultimately just means he settled them, he hushed them. Where is the place in the text that tells us that the people need to be hushed? Nowhere, right? It's just implied. He calms the people. Is the text's way of saying, because this is spoken by a narrator. So Vayahas Kalev is there to tell us the people were, it isn't pretty, right? To borrow a line from Hamilton. This is uproar in the camp, right? This is causing a bit of uproar. So that's the first thing, is that we learn from this line that there's uproar based on this report. Vayahas Kalev et ha'am. So he's trying to calm the people. El Moshe. This word, El, and El Moshe, the use of El Moshe, is going to stump the commentators. And it's what caught my eye and why I wanted to dig into this verse. El Moshe. What Moshe? What was it with Moshe? Because El is a little bit of a vague conjunctive word here. To Moshe, he calmed the people to Moshe, with Moshe, on Moshe, next to Moshe, because of Moshe. It's not clear. We're going to pick apart 3 different takes on this in a moment. Vayomer, saying, like he said, Alo na'aleh. This is the first of 2 duplicate uses of a verb. Come on, let's go. Let's go up. let's make aliyah, so to speak. Let's go up to this place. V'yarashnu ota. We're gonna take over it. Ki yachol nuchal. Second duplicative. It is definitely possible. We can, yes, we can. Would say Everett Fox, the translator. La. We surely can do it. It's definitely possible. He speaks. Okay. So El Moshe is definitely the tricky part here. But I wanted you to hear Sforno's basic take on it first before we just dug into it. I'm going to read it in the Hebrew, and I'm happy to have you, any of you, leap in from Zoom here, and people may be watching on YouTube as well. I'm happy to have any of you leap in at any time, but I want to pick these apart in the Hebrew because I think they're so excellent, and we'll go through them in the English as well. I want to go through the first part of Sforno and then get to the Sforno on El Moshe itself. So here's Sforno on this first part, on the Vayahas Kalev. Okay. Hishtik et ha'am shehayu matchilim me'az latet kolam, kemo she'asu achar kach, gamru v'tisa kol ha'eda, v'yitnu et kolam. So he quieted the people because they'd begun to raise their voices, right? So he needs to comment on this because, remember, the text didn't tell us that people had been all riled up. So Sforno's saying, yeah, we get it. People started to get all riled up because they started to raise their voices, right? And then Sforno quotes another place in the Torah just a little bit later when people started to raise their voices and cry the whole night. That seems that it is a related verse, like a proof text, okay? To say, this is what our people did. They started to lift up their voices in a similar way. And then he goes on to this El Moshe piece. So why El Moshe in this? Couldn't it have just said, Vayas Kalev et ha'am vayomer, right? He hushed the people saying, let's go. Couldn't it have just said that? Why El Moshe? Why stick that in there? Because he was quieting the people. So why Moshe in that verse? Sforno says, Sheyishme'u ma yashiv Moshe. He quieted the people so that they would hear what Moshe would say in reply. Right? Sforno said this wasn't about what Caleb was going to say. This is him quieting the people to say whatever so that Moshe would be able to say something. He wanted the people quiet enough so they could listen to Moshe. So Caleb saw his job as what? You all look like a very quiet bunch now. It's 8 o'clock, like Mincha Mariv. That's a tough hour. But if you feel like saying something, you can chime in. What did Caleb see his job as? Because this is only going to build. Larry's going to try to jump in on this. But Larry cannot unmute. Let's see if Larry can unmute. Okay.
There we go. Okay, thank you. So I'm reading my birthday present, which is
yes,
which is Legends of the Jews. So it says, as soon as this is Louis Ginsburg, who actually is compiling all the different midrashim and the stories. And he says, as soon as the spies had completed the report, Joshua arose to contradict them. But they gave him no chance to speak, calling out to him, by what right dost thou, foolish man, presume to speak? Thou hast neither sons nor daughters, so what dost thou care if we perish in our attempt to conquer the land? We, on the other hand, have to look out for our children and wives. Joshua, therefore, very much against his will, had to be silent. Caleb now considered in what way he could manage to get a hearing without being shouted down, as Joshua had. Caleb had given his comrades an entirely false impression concerning his sentiments, for when these formed the plan to try to make Israel desist from entering Palestine, they drew him into their council, and he pretended to agree with them.
So hang on, before you get to that, it might be a spoiler for the best part of these commentaries. So hold tight on that commentary, because I bet he's going to bring that fantastic piece that I'm going to bring you from Sota. So Hold tight because I bet that's where he's going. But what you gave us is exactly what I'm looking for now. That is what he saw his job as. That's exactly right. But we're about to find out if Ginsburg set brings what. I'm only stopping you so you don't spoil the last source, but absolutely, that's exactly what he saw his job as. And what I love about what you said is it's differentiated from what Joshua saw his job as, right? And also a great bridge into what we're going to look at next, which is who the heck was he to speak, right? The people are actually going to question if he has the authority to even get in there and speak. So we'll get there next on what El Moshe could possibly mean. It's almost like Ginsburg and I saw these sources in a very similar way. So Baruch Shekivanti. Thank you for that. Tybal, did you want to add something before I go to the next source?
I don't know. This was before Larry spoke, so I'm not sure if that's where you're going, but I thought of this analogy that he was the Robert's Rules of Order guy.
Yes. Okay. So I like this. So maybe Caleb sees himself as the this is who needs to speak next, right? So Sforno's take on this is he's shushing them. He says, I need to put this motion on the table, right? I think we need to go because I know this is the motion that our leader has asked us to put on the table. Now you all need to hear him out. I like that. I like that a lot. That's very helpful. Okay, good. So now we're going to go to the Or HaChaim on this piece, and we're going to take a look at this idea of Caleb having silenced the people, and before we do it, having silenced the people in a very strange situation, I think we need to picture what's actually happening in the scene at hand before this makes sense. Remember that this is like a small dozen bunch of spies coming back to an enormous crowd, right? A huge crowd of people. Hundreds of thousands of people they're reporting to. This is a huge event that they're reporting in front of. This is not a private meeting by any means, quite the opposite. So, the Or Chaim sees the El Moshe in the verse. This is the inciting phrase. They see the El Moshe in Vayas Kalev et Ha'am. They see the El Moshe and they say, Perush lefi she'ein koach ba'adam hediot להשתיק המון 600 אלף לזה בא במאמרו כי הוא משתיקים אל משה ולא לגזירתו. So what they're saying, well, actually, let me keep going on the next little verse. V'yadua ki Moshe melech. Okay, pausing there. So he explained that the explanation of this is it's because a regular person does not have the strength to quiet down all these hundreds of thousands of people such as this with a regular old speech, just, quieting them down. So the Torah here adds these El Moshe words to let us know that he did this in order to make them listen to Moshe and not to himself. And we knew that he was inspired. He inspired them to listen to Moshe by saying like this, this is on behalf of Moshe. So then it brings a quote that tells us, hang on one second. Flipping the page. So he brings us a quote to prove that Moshe is as if he has the rank of a king among his people, and therefore the people would quiet down for a king. And he also says, "Ve'amar alona ale v'arashnu otat." And let's go. The Or HaChaim's looking at that next part of the verse, and let's go ahead and let us go up and conquer the land. And now that he sort of invokes this authority that Moshe has, he can say that even though the other spies said they can't overcome it, he feels like the Israelites are able to prevail, but he can only say this once he's taken on the mantle of saying, this isn't just me, Caleb, speaking. This is me speaking with Moshe's authority on my shoulders, right? Standing next to Moshe. So it can't just come from Caleb. He can only silence them if he's basically silencing them through the mask of Moshe. The Torah doesn't think it can happen only on Caleb's authority. So that's, or rather, Or Chaim doesn't think that can only happen on Caleb's authority. The Rashbam has a different take. And the Rashbam has a different take because the Rashbam has read the Bavli and is definitely taking his take from the Bavli. And there's a funny typo in the Rashbam, but I'll correct it as I read it. And the Sota that he's going to reference is, I'm almost certain, where Ginsburg is going to go. But when I finish, I want to hear if this is where Ginsburg goes. So Larry's going to share with us afterwards. So Rashbam says the following. Vayahas. What does that mean? This whole silencing business? Shikam b'chokhmato. He got clever with them. He got them quiet by being clever. He tricked them into being quiet. So what does this mean that he tricked them into being quiet? I would love for somebody who has a source sheet in front of them to read for us dramatically, if you may. I see Joanna's face. Maybe Joanna will read it for us. Dramatically pausing in between the three parts that I put here in the English, dramatically, not the Aramaic. The Aramaic's not as clear. Dramatically in the English from Sota 35a, what Caleb purportedly did. Would you do it, Joanna?
I would, except that I peeked at it yesterday, but I forgot to print before Shabbat. So I actually don't have it in front of me at this moment.
Okay. All right. Otherwise, I'd have you do it. Would someone else like to do it dramatically? Otherwise, I'll do it. All right. I will do it. I'll do a dramatic read. And then we'll find out what Ginsburg has to say. But when I found this read from Sota, I thought, that's such great politics. And it's a great story. Here we go. So the verse states, this is our verse. Vayahas Kalev et ha'am el Moshe. Okay. Rabbah, one of the characters in the Talmud, says, this means that he persuaded them, Hesitan, with his words. Because Vayahas and Hesitan come from the same root in Hebrew. Okay? So that's where Rashbam, by the way, is getting his Chokhmato read. Because it's a convincing, he says, he's not really quieting them, he's convincing. By the way, I love this because I think that it fixes this hushing thing. I don't think the hushing thing actually makes all that much sense because in the pshat of the Torah, right, in the plain read of the Torah, nobody's all that loud or riled up. Anyway, I digress from the story. So, it says he persuaded them with words. Next part. Caleb, he says to himself, if I speak, they will also say something about me, right? Say something bad about me, presumably, and stop me from speaking. He began to speak and said to them, and is this the only thing that the son of Amram, that is Moshe, has done to us? And they thought that he wanted to relate something to the discredit of Moshe. And they were silent, right? So what does he do? He says, this guy, he always wants to do something. This isn't the first thing he's done to us. El Moshe, right? And so they all get quiet. And then what does Caleb say? He then says to them, "He took us out of Egypt, and he split the sea for us, and he fed us manna." If he says to us, "Build ladders and climb to the heavens," should we not listen to him? We should go up at once, even to the heavens, and possess it. Which is quoting another verse later or earlier in Bamidbar, as if he knows Bamidbar back in and forwards. I love this. I love this so much because it's such great rhetoric. He's a rhetorician, our Caleb, right? He's the opposite of quiet Joshua. He's a rhetorician who knows how to spin and get the crowd quiet enough, but by tricking, and it sort of fixes this funny part in the verse. Larry, what did Ginsburg have to say about this?
So you're right. He had some other things too. So I'm not going to read because it's a little bit too long.
That's okay. We have time.
Well, it's about 3 pages. So
okay, all right. We don't have time, but whatever you want to add.
He tells a midrash that I don't know. I'm just learning how to use this and go to the index to find the other sources. But he tells a midrash that apparently Caleb had this big booming voice. And we know it was a big booming voice because he in fact saved the spies from the Anakim, from the giants who were chasing after him in some midrash with his voice. And we also are told that his voice could extend to 12, I think it said, not kilometers, but anyways, this huge expansive territory, which is where this thing was taking place. So everybody can hear him. Now you're exactly right. He starts off and he basically leads them to believe that he's on their side. And he knows that they shouted down Joshua and they attacked him. And that's why Joshua couldn't speak. So he needs to find a way to get them to allow him to speak. And he does it in this way by saying, look at what Moshe did, just as you described, and just as Sota describes. And then he goes on and he explains this what's in Sota is pretty much what Ginsburg says. I have a comment on it, but before the comment, unfortunately, as you continue to read, it says, Caleb's mighty voice did not, however, in the least impress the people or the spies, for the latter, far from retracting the previous statement, went so far as to say, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. They are so strong that even God cannot get at them. And it goes on, and the end of the midrash here is, they said that they were giants in our eyes, and we were as grasshoppers in their sight. And God got mad. And this is not in the Torah. God got mad at them and said, how the hell do you know what I let them see you as? Right. So that's how it links to the end of the story. My comment, I think, which is your comment too, this is so real in terms of politics. Nobody wants to listen to you if you're simply going to directly refute what it is that you're saying. So if your opponent, so to speak, or politically someone you know is on the other side, you don't read them. But you listen to the guys who are on your side, who maybe have something to say that you disagree with. They may not convince you, but at least you're more likely to read them.
That's exactly right. I think that we are attuned to the critical, and it would be great of us to just to know that about ourselves. Secondly, to push ourselves, to open ourselves up to other voices, but to use that as a tool in our own explorations of the world. It reminds me of a scene. I hope that I'm not spoiling for anyone because it's a very small plot point in the last season of Shtisel, but there's a really wonderful scene in which Shulam, the patriarch of the family, the school that he would like to launch, a new school, is going to be is being protested, and he sends his son down among the protesters to seed rumors that his father is he sends his son anonymously, to down among the protesters to seed rumors that even his even forcing his own grandchildren to be tested to the highest levels. He's not automatically accepting his own grandsons. What a terrible grandfather he is. He's not even accepting his own grandsons without giving them the highest testing levels before letting them in. And this rumor starts to spread. And all of a sudden people are talking about, oh, well, he's testing people at the highest levels. Oh, gosh. And so it sort of shuts down the protest. And it reminds me of this idea, right? You only want to hear sort of the critical and the terrible thing about that person who you already see in a critical way. And that's the thing that opens the door to your listening to whatever might come next, whatever the next move is. I think what I most appreciate about this verse and these many, many takes on this verse to wrap on this conversation is that our commentators and I really are wondering where Moshe is in this moment. Because he is in the verse, but the character himself is not active in this verse. And we do have to wonder what kind of a diplomacy and what kind of a rhetoric he was hoping for from these spies who he had sent out. We know ultimately how the story shakes out, but what we don't necessarily know is what he wanted and what he hoped for from these men who came back and made the reports that they did. And I think that this is a wrestling with the way in which other people stepped up comfortably or uncomfortably to try to quiet this this discomfort with moving to the next stage in their people's life. And possibly, in some ways, I wonder if this is one of the first places in our Torah where we, as we're reading along, are witnessing the first time when Moshe is beginning to see what his people are going to be facing in new generations of leadership. This is what's going to come. He knows. He knows that there is going to be a new generation of leadership. And we're watching that play out. We're watching that argument play out right here in this moment. We're watching the new generations of leadership try to see what's going to come next. He won't witness it in his lifetime, Moshe, but he is seeing what's going to happen when the people have to wrestle with whoever their next leaders are going to be. And it's going to be different, very, very different, a different melech, so to speak. So great studying these sources with all of you. And now I want to borrow Larry's birthday present book sometime because that seems fun and hard to navigate. And we'll continue with our Mariv service. I think we have just about enough time for that. Yeah, perfect. So we continue in, oh, you know what? I saw that Tybel's hand was, before we finish up, I just saw that Tybel's hand went down. So I wonder if that was intentionally up. Did you want to say something?
If I may.
Yes, please.
If you're going to read Louis Ginsburg, then you need to read the letters that, or not need, one might want to read the book from the letters that Henrietta Zold wrote about him after he sucked her dry and broke her heart.
Oh, what a story.
So she recovered by founding Hadassah, but still.
Okay. I will. I love a good story like that, and you're not wrong that's very interesting. Okay, fantastic last juicy point on that topic. And there are lots of interesting people like that and stories like that among our historians. So with that, we'll move to Mariv. Mariv begins in Lev Shalem on page 264, in the newer Sim Shalom on page 281, and in the older Sim Shalom on page 200. Because we aren't doing the Baruch Hu, we begin seated. Vihu rachum yichaper avam v'lo yashchit vir balev shiva po v'lo yahir kol chamato Adonai Hoshia HaMelech Yaneinu v'yom koreinu Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'varav hariv haravim Umavim yom umevi laila Umavdil ben yom uvein laila Adonai tzvaot shemo El chai v'kayam tamidim lo chalinu leolam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Hamariv haravim Ahavat olam beit Yisrael mahavtat Ki hem chayenu v'yorech yomeinu V'hem neke yomam v'layla V'avatachal tasir Yimeinu leolamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael El melech ne'eman Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Adonai Elohechem Hemed. Umalchuto beratzon kilu alehem. Moshe v'nei Yisrael echanu shira v'simcha rava v'yameru kulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh nora tehilot osef ele malchutecha ravanecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe zehili hanue haleru Adonai himloch leolam va'ed V'nehem l'arkif et Adonai Jacob, u'gelam yad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. Ashkinu. U'shmor tzeitzenu u'einu, lechaim u'shalom yatavi ad olam. Baruch atah Adonai shomer ha'ma Yisrael land. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu. היא המלכות שלך היא, ולהתאים לך כבוד, היא המלכים מלך אלתה. ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ועל כל מעשיו. The Whispered Amidah for Shabbat evening begins on page 270 in Lev Shalem, 286a or b in the newer Sim Shalom, page 210 in the older Sim Shalom, in which you should remember, please make inclusions for the end of Shabbat. Yadinai, nai, 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 nai. Yadinai, nai, 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 nai. Yadinai, nai, 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 nai. We continue on page 269, 285, or 208. יקראני ביניהו עמנוכי וצרח על עצהו וחודהו ארך ימים השביעהו ויראהו בישועתי ארך ימים השביעהו ויראהו בישועתי. In Left Shalom, we turn back to page 216 to the second paragraph on the page. All other Sidurim, we continue forward in the Sidur. ואתה קדוש יושב תהילת ישראל, וקרא זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. ותישאני רוח ושמע אחרי כל רעש גדול, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומות. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ויבטחו בך ידי שמך כי לא עזבת דורשך אדוני, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה ויאדיר. Turn to Aleinu on 281, 297, or 696. Aleinu לשבח לאדון הכל, מתי גדולה וצדק אישית שלו. אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומורדים לפני מלך מלכי המלך. הכתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 282, 298, or 698. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah ve'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael b'hagala u'bizman kari ve'imru amen yehi shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lamei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudusha berichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imru amen yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Just a minute, we'll do Havdalah together. Tomorrow morning there is Daily Minyan online. You can find the link on the front page of the website. It is online only on Sundays for the foreseeable future. We can be back in person on Monday morning. Monday is a federal holiday, which means that we are in person at 8 a.m. Hang on just one moment. We're about to do Havdalah, and we're going to be getting the new Havdalah candle. Bring the new Havdalah candle in with the Havdalah candle holder. My family's going to join me. And so 8 a.m. on Monday morning in person. If you'd like to sign up, please email Rabbi Schatz. No, it's not on Monday morning at that time. No. Larry's going to tell me why. Maybe.
Monday morning, we're davening at Michael Bearmom's backyard because the shul is still closed.
Got it.
8
Wonderful.
o'clock.
Thank you.
8 o'clock.
But at 8 o'clock, correct.
8 o'clock, but Michael Bearmom's backyard.
Be sure to sign up so that you can get all the details. But it is at 8 o'clock, not at the 7:30 usual time, because federal holiday. We hope we are remembering people beautifully and also enjoying weekends off. Wonderful. So make sure to sign up for details. What's that?
You have a plate?
I got this. It's fine. Okay, and I need a
for,
lighter.
Like, drips and for.
Yeah, it's fine. And okay, I have a brand new, very tall Havdalah candle. It's like taller than me.
Can I see?
Yeah, you can see. Of course, baby. In just a minute. And I will show you in just a minute when you come and join me.
I'm on the potty.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Ella, for sharing that with the world. Okay, I'm pouring myself my juice. Yalai lalai lai 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 yalai lai lai yalai yalai lalai lai 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 yalai lalai lai 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 yai lalai yai lai 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 yai lalai yai lai yo yai lalai yai lai lai yai lalai yai lai lai hini al Yeshuati eftach velo efchai ki ozi v'zimrat ya Adonai vayehi li lishua u'shaktamayim v'sason v'manai Yeshua l'Adonai Yeshua Aloha v'irchatecha zela Adonai tzevaot imanu miskav lainu Elohei Yaakov Sela Adonai Tzevot Asher Yadam Botei Achach Adonai Yoshia Hamelech Yaneinu Yom Koreinu La Yehudim Hayta Ora Vesimcha v'sason v'ikar Kein tiyeh lanu Kosi Yeshu hotesa Uv'shem Adonai ekra Yainanai yainanai nainai Yainanai yainanai nainai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei Peri hagafen Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei Minei besamim Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei Meori ha'esh Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamavdil ben kodesh lecho ben or lecho shel ben Yisrael amim ben yom hashvihi l'shishet yemei hamaseh Baruch atah Adonai Hamavdil ben kodesh lecho.
Amen.
Do you want to drink the grape juice?
Nah, I had so much extra milk that I think I am even going to get
Eliyahu hanavi Eliyahu hatishvi Eliyahu Eliyahu hagiladi Bimera v'yameinu
יבוא אלינו עם משיח בן דוד, עם משיח בן דוד.
I wanted to.
But I would have to do the, if you want to do it with me, then I have to do the ukulele, okay? Okay, so we're going to sing one last blessing.
Oh man, Mommy, no, this isn't the song.
It will be. It will be.
This is.
Are you ready? We'll just do the we, okay? Okay, we're gonna bless everybody for a really good night, okay? We'll just do may we be saved. Ready? You'll say what? May we be saved. May we be free. May we find space to just be. Can you hear that song? Can you hear that song? May we find our way. Can you hear that song? Can you hear that song? Just do. May we find our way back home. Say goodnight to everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Shavua tov, everybody.
Yay.
Yay.
Good night, Mommy.
Yeah. Click it there. Wait, no.